Hello everybody, it's Damon, and today's video is going to be unique in style because I'm going to minimize the editing, minimize the polished look, and stay true to form to the origins of this channel. So today's topic is about input, and it's about how that input is going to manifest change in your life. Today's topic is also covering some of the ways that input has changed my life. But before I do, I want to give you full context of this particular topic. I've never really been one for context, but I think it's important in this case. So bear with me, as this may not seem like it's coming to a giant point, but it is. So if you just stay tuned, you'll hopefully get the value that I'm hoping to put out there. So this will be a little raw, so I apologize for some of you that may not have the patience to get through this. So however, if you do like this style of video, please click the subscribe button. I really appreciate your viewership. Now, that all being said, let me start off with kind of how this channel formed. I've told this story several times, but some of you that may be new to this channel, or some of you that may not have seen those old videos, probably don't really understand what has happened. So for the last 4 years, I have produced content on this channel rather inconsistently. And there's reasons for that. Some of that was due to a major depression. Some of that was because I actually had no further words to contribute to the community, right? I had no further content to produce. I lost the content because I got involved in something that I went down a wrong road. And I think anybody with a decent foresight would have seen it, but at the time I was so involved. And what I mean by involved is when I take on a bad habit that I have, or some of you may see as a good habit, is I get 100% obsessed with whatever it is that I do. When I see something, I dive into it 100%. And I get so involved in that particular activity, I consume it to its fullest extent. And that obsession is what happened with the typology area. And my channel moved from a personal development, get better at what you do, get better at live your best life, to typology. And for the last few years, I felt that typology was a very limited road. And I think a lot of you who are out there producing typology content are interested in it, but there's a few figureheads in typology, such as Eric with Talking with Famous People, or Dave Superpowers, or some other people that I'm failing to mention right now, who are really making a difference in that field. I think Jack Oliver Aaron with World Socionic Society, all of you figureheads are making a difference to not radicalize, but to revolutionize the idea of typology and bring it all together, and probably a few others out there. So I didn't feel like that was my place. I still don't. I still am going to produce content on the other channel, Flow State. If you haven't checked it out, make sure you check that channel out too. But aside from that, I did lose my way, because my input before I started producing typology content was these books right here. My input was history. My input was becoming a more developed human being and getting through the challenges that I had. Although I've identified with Enneagram 8 throughout the typology era, and I've identified with ENTJ and MBTI, or SLE and Socionics, I've always been semi-aware of where my problems were, and I think that was due to the martial arts, right? What challenges I had, because although I've never been a person to introspect much, martial arts encouraged meditation, encouraged self-insight and self-release, right? Ego dissolution through meditation, and finding that these passing thoughts aren't actually you. We are all faced with these 9 instincts of the Enneagram, right? These 9 things that create challenges in our life. And these 9 instincts that we have that push us to a certain point. And they influence our ego and the way that it's formed and developed. And anyway, point being is that as I realized and have been identified with this, I've also realized it's a dead end. And I missed that when I was producing content on my failed business back in 2016 of typology content, right? So I went through a major depression, not because the business failed, but rather as it was reaching a point where the fulfillment was missing, and I felt like the impact that I was making was minimal. I got burnt out. I coached way too many people, although I enjoyed working with those people. I didn't get physical burnout. It was more like, why am I doing this? And I'm chasing something. What am I chasing? Is it fame? Is it fortune? Is it freedom? Is it power? Is it control? And I started coming to this point of realizing my flaws were being highlighted by a microscope, right? I could now start seeing them magnified. It's like looking at them through a magnifying glass, and started realizing some of the things that were bubbling to the surface. And I attribute this to my long years in martial arts and being able to recognize when things are out of balance, because the key has always been balance. And I've known that, and I've trained in that, and I've seen that, and I've felt that as balance is the answer. And when we look at these different aspects of our life, whether they're financial or relationships or spiritual or physical or whatever else, business or career or opportunity or various other subjects, right? Sexuality or maturity, we start realizing that one is usually getting most of our attention, or two maybe, and then we're neglecting and pushing these things to the side. And that was difficult. And what I always chose to sacrifice was spirituality, because it required so much introspection. So I just put that to the wayside and realized that other things take more priority. And I adopted a belief that spirituality didn't need to be practiced because things unfold on their own, right? And what I realized, that was an excuse. So when I started focusing on typology and producing this business, which was rather successful at first, I started letting go of the standard input and adopting this type mentality, like, ooh, let's pursue further type. And I think it's fine to study your interest, but my interest really lies in world matters, right? That includes politics, that includes education, that includes psychology or domestic issues, right? Or things that I think really matter and in the long term. And typing somebody a 4-letter code to me is so minimal and compared to some of these bigger issues that I've been focused on. So I've spent a lot of time really reflecting on that, and I realized that my input was missing, my form, what I used to program my brain with. And so I started becoming, I would say that I'd like to think that I became more humble as I moved and grew, but things got difficult for me. I think mainly what started that depression was the realization that I'm not 20 anymore, and I got older, and I wasn't getting better. I started realizing I was getting worse. And I think that was, yes, I was taking life to the fullest extent, but I've gotten older and I can't make the same mistakes again, because now there's people depending on me. I'm not the dependent anymore. And even though I would never classify myself as a dependent, it's just like I figured if I push hard enough, the world will start changing around me. Well, as I've gotten older, it's like now there's people that depend on me, right? And I failed being a support figure for these people because I was so involved in A, my own activities, B, my own business, and C, things were so out of balance that I lost all my relationships, right? So there's an interview I did with Jack Oliver Aaron. He said, "Do you have many friends?" And I said, "No." And it made me think, and it said, "Is it because you're really an asshole?" And wait for that truck to pass. Is it really because you're an asshole? Is it because you're a dick? Is it because you don't know how to communicate? And none of those are true. What it was that I became obsessed because I dive into things so obsessively, and I get in and I'm just taking it into the fullest experience of whatever that is, whatever activity that may be at the time. And man, it sucks. It sucks being so identified with 8 Wing 7. It's because you dive so deep into something and then you jump to something else and dive deep into that as well, and that's SX too. So the instinct of SX plus Enneagram 8 plus Wing 7, it's just like, it's a nightmare. And as I've gotten older, I realized that I get more and more involved with this delusion, and I thought I was making so much progress. And in the long run, yes, this whole period is a learning experience, right? And it's amounting up to something greater than this particular moment or struggle, right? But at the time, it's just like, it hit me like, you're not always moving forward. You're taking steps backward too, and changing your input because of what I was subject to be as a kid. The environmental bad habits start boiling to the surface, and you start realizing that what you think you were, right, is and now coming back, and you've worked so hard to kind of not push that down, but to adapt. So I noticed the big change in me because my anger started coming back, my high levels of anger, and I hadn't had that anger in 10 plus years. And in 2016, some of you on the channel might have known that when I originally made content, you'd post something that would contradict something I'd say, and I would be graceful about it, right? I wouldn't really be so pissed off. And then as I've progressed or regressed, depending on how you look at it, I started getting more and more defensive, angry, irritable, and I would not respond as in kind to these messages as I did at the early stages of my channel. And my anger started resurfacing, and it wasn't because people were contradicting me. It was because other things were happening, and I didn't realize it until I just lost a lot of the work that the martial arts brought me, right? Because I had to give that up. I'll talk about that in another video, but I'm very thankful for those experiences, but I had to let all that go after a certain point. This has been a very difficult journey these last few years, more so than the other challenges I had faced. I've always identified with being comfortable, being uncomfortable, as cliche as that might sound. I was fine with the discomfort that I created in my life, pushing my boundaries physically or otherwise. So anyway, things started changing probably a few months back, late 2019 maybe, where I started kicking myself out of this depression. It lasted from early 2017 to late 2018, so pretty long bout there. Props to my girlfriend Lily for pushing through and being there when I kind of wasn't there for myself. And so very, very, very proud to have her in my life, and if she's watching this, she'll be shocked that I actually, she made such a difference. Sometimes I guess she feels that she doesn't make a huge difference in my life, and I'm not really good at giving compliments either, so makes that challenging for her. But anyway, aside from that, the biggest change was her keeping me stable, putting kind of a foundation there, right? Because this was the time where I said I've never depended on anybody that actually did. And I had to be vulnerable for once because I recognized where I fell short. And she kind of put enough foundation there for me to not go to zero, right? But to barely stay above the water level and survive. And she gave that to me because it's a dark area. If some of you know what I'm talking about. I'm not ashamed of saying I was depressed. I just never used it as an excuse. Like, I just don't think it's something that you should use as an excuse to not do your best every day. Sometimes your best may be just taking a shower that day, but you gotta push. And that's what I was forced to do, right, is push. And I took a shower every day. But I faced that same struggle. For one, it may be taking a shower every day is hard. For me, it was more of loss of vision, right? I didn't know where I was going or what I was doing because I'd lost something very dear to me. And I think any loss, major loss in your life, doesn't have to be a person, can cause this type of cataclysm in your life. So that being said, it was the biggest change for me was changing input, right? So I said, you know, historically, what's always kicked me out of these little funks is just getting physically active again. And so I think mid to late last year, I had made a video about getting started and doing some HIIT and some exercise. And I started that, and I started slow because I just didn't have a lot of energy. I was in the middle of this miserable psychological hell. But I got myself up at 5:30 in the morning, started working out once to twice per week, 30 minutes to an hour a day. And that was the beginning of the end for this period of my life. But it wasn't enough, right? There's times where I was like, I just don't feel the motivation to get up. I'm just gonna stay here. So I would turn on a video, not in the morning, but the previous night, and starting the input again, right? Watching videos, listening to things, inspirational things that would make me feel that the gym was the first step. And once I started moving my body, I would get sick, right? I'd go to the gym and I get nauseous, go to the gym and get nauseous. I get sick every day. Like, I just did not have the energy that I was forcing myself to output on those days. So I'd get sick, I'd get nauseous, come home, feel like I'm gonna throw up. I remember there was a period where I was in the car and I was driving back from the gym and I got so damn nauseous I had to pull over. And I didn't work out that hard. I'm telling you, it was the easiest freaking workout ever. And my mind was so it was just so unconditioned that my mind, not my body, my mind, that everything made me sick. And anyway, it's tough. It's tough because I'd get so stressed out about having to do something, and I've always been a doer, and it was just like so far from what I had known myself to be. It was like starting from zero, and anybody who's faced major trauma, whether physical or what otherwise, experiences this, and some of them come out champions, right? Well, not this time for me. I just felt like, okay, I'm older and I've experienced this a few other times before, so now I've lost it. And I kept pushing, right? But the input is what really started changing my psychology, and I started, okay, let's watch some exercise videos, let's get some motivation. Let's start inputting what a healthy lifestyle is, right? Because it's not about being super ripped or being vain, right? Because I mean, there's an extent to that. I think we all enjoy looking good, but not hating ourselves is the key, right? We all want to look good because we want to feel good in our own bodies, our own skin. But for me, it was much more than that. It was, I need to save myself by doing something that I've done my whole life. And so I started putting those videos on and taking that information. And anyway, long story short is that I started exercising consistently. Went from 2 days to 3 days to 4 days, started changing my diet, started changing all this stuff. Not that I was eating terribly bad before, but I just wasn't watching what I was eating. But I started changing all that, and I don't know, now here I am 7-8 months later, really enjoying this new amount of physical vitality that I have, right? But it was a process. It wasn't just something that happened overnight. However, although I've seen success in this area of my life, the other areas are out of balance, right? I still have a lot of work in the relationship arena, a lot of work in the intimacy, vulnerability arena, a lot of work in the balance arena, a lot of work in the career arena. I mean, every other part of my life is still damaged from this major depression that I've just let go of it all. It's just, I was a quitter, right? And I don't like quitters, but I was one, and I had to, and sharing this vulnerability is difficult because, I don't know, it just, I was so used to seeing myself as such a strong person that at one point, I realized that I wasn't as strong as I thought. But then, now today I realize I was actually stronger because I was able to push through regardless of the circumstance. And yeah, it took longer than I would have liked, but so much I have learned from that experience. Wouldn't say that I'm more humble, I'd say I'm less humble, but I'd like to get back to letting go of this ego identity that has formed as a result of that, because a lot of the depression has to do with the attachment to our ego or who we think we are, right? So the next step is to really start working on the spiritual component and the political opponent, right? Or component rather, political opponent. I was thinking about something else, but the political component, which I see things, and socio-economical components, right? Because in order to make a difference in this life, I used to think that I would have to just push against the world and the world would start changing, which was true to an extent. I could push hard enough where I could change my environment around me. But the real answers to this lie into changing here, right? Changing the soul, changing your heart, changing your intentions. I used to think it was cool to be a hard ass and push against people and mess with them, right? And manipulate people and, in other words, fuck with them. And that was the intention that I had, was let's see how much I can push this person. I can make this person break under pressure, or whatever the fuck it was. That enjoyment that I got out of that. And that was back when I was a teen. And then it was, let's start changing for the better. Let's start changing other people, and seeing what impact we can have in a positive way, right? Adding significance. And then there was a point where it was like, let's just grow. But changing here is where the answer was the whole time, right? Is if I change this, then the amount of energy that I'm projecting into the world will start making modifications in the environment, which is why I always have believed in input. And I don't know if it's pseudoscience. I don't know if it's science at all, right? But to me, it's always worked, is how much you can program your mind with what you're taking in. The law of averages, right? The top 10 people you spend the most time with, you become the average of those 10 people. And that to me is pretty true, pretty consistent. So returning back to the changing this inner part, is you have to be in order to do, in order to have. And I got obsessed with the having and trying to shortcut, right? What's the fastest way I can get what I want? And actually destroyed the be, right? It destroyed the being. And I don't mean completely killed it, but just broke it down. And instead of putting my foot down and going, okay, I know who you are, and I'm unapologetic for who I am. But that's not the impact that I want to have long term, right? Not the impact I want to have on other people, but the impact on myself and the people that care about me. I've always seen myself as the support, right? The crux, being able to be the one that others turn to in times of need and in times of strength. I was always the one that was able to pull everyone up, because what I realized really early on in my martial arts training was, it's easy to knock someone down, right? It's easy to take someone out. One punch can completely just take someone unconscious or even kill them, depending on how you hit somebody. But it's a lot harder to pick them up. The real feat comes from being able to reach down and picking that person up and helping them stand on their own 2 feet, which is where my passion is. It's like, no, I gotta stop trying to push people down, but instead focus on being able to pick people up and help them. And but in order to do that, you don't do it by trying to impress others, right? You don't do it by trying to have power over others or forcing control on others, but you do it through being, living. The most influential person I ever met was actually kind of mean to other people, not in a completely destroy your life kind of way, but he was so stable internally that people flocked to him and they grew from his presence. And even though he was harsh in a lot of ways, and he had a very, very stable presence, and people were attracted to that, and he helped people stand on their own 2 feet. So I want you all to understand that changing input was the first step. And what you put into your life, the type of music you listen to, what you surround yourself with, even your thoughts will change how you are in the next 10 years. It's the compounding effect, right? Who you surround yourself with, what type of things you do, what type of activities you find yourself in. And this has been my advice to myself for so long. And so make sure that you spend time analyzing what you're taking in, what kind of activity you're taking in. And if you're anything like me, where you get obsessed with something, it better be something good. It better be something good for your future, something that's not going to take you away from your purpose, your vision, right? The things that are driving you to be what it is you want to be, or who it is you want to be, or what it is you want to attain. So anyway, that is what I wanted to capture with this video for the most part. So hopefully this has been helpful for some of you. And welcome to how I'm branding this channel. Welcome to kind of a new turn. I'm not going to promise any super consistency at this point, but I will make an effort. I think there's a lot of stuff I'd like to share in the upcoming videos, less about typology. Should you want to see typology content, check out Flow State. We're going to have some stuff on there. But with this, thank you for being able to view this video, and thank you guys in the typology community for continuing to contribute and continually make something that helps people identify with something better and helps people figure themselves out easier and makes their journey just a little bit better. And I also appreciate you guys saying to not make excuses because you're a certain type. Those of you who are professionals in that community have made a huge difference. So thank you all too. In the meantime, I will work on getting the next videos produced for y'all, and that way in the future you'll start seeing content related to becoming, or rather not even becoming, but returning to who you are. Not becoming, not trying to create an image for yourself, or not trying to be something you're not, or feeling the need to mask an insecurity. So thanks everyone. Make sure if you liked any of this content, you click that subscribe button. I would appreciate that, and I hope to see you next time. Thank you.